world knew him as the billionaire who only dated supermodels, but the night a grocery store cashier asked if he was lost, his empire began to crumble. He built towers of glass and steel, commanded headlines in boardrooms, but one woman with a crooked smile and no fear of him shattered the illusion in a single question. The revolving doors sighed as Nathaniel Cross stepped into the city's cold gleam, a chorus of shudders and murmurs rising like a tide around him. Flashbulbs popped, lighting his face with that practiced half-smile, the one he could summon in his sleep. His hand found the small of the model's back without looking. Her name tonight was Amelia, all glossy hair and angles, a walking exclamation mark in a dress designed to make the world stare. Assistants orbited with clipboards and battery packs. The photographer barked something about one more chin left, and Nathaniel adjusted with the ease of someone who had learned long ago that a face could be worn like a uniform. The glass tower behind him soared into the night, its windows bright as an algorithm, his name perched at the top in a tasteful sans serif. The car idled at the curb, a low, purring thing black as an ocean trench. An assistant threaded a schedule into Nathaniel's hand, lines of commitment stacked with the certainty of gravity. He didn't read it. He nodded once, the sign that meant continue breathing, and the assistant did. "Perfect," the photographer said, satisfied at last. "You two are absurd together." Amelia laughed, tipping her head so that the diamonds at her ears caught the streetlights. "Absurd is the new romantic." Nathaniel smiled for the camera and watched his reflection in the windshield instead. Jaw set, hair immaculate, tie knotted with aggressive precision. He looked like the advertisement everyone kept buying. He wondered, as he often did in these moments, what would happen. And if he stopped performing mid-breath, if he let the smile drop, if he moved his hand away, if he said, "I'm tired." He could already hear the damage control calls, the press statement, the speculation. So he didn't. He slipped into the car and let the night swallow him. Up in the tower, the conference room still smelled faintly of the catered dinner, parsley and money. The board had applauded another quarter of dominance, their faces bright with the reflected light of his success. He had shaken hands, delivered the sound bites, watched the numbers march obediently across the screen. It was a kind of symphony, triumphant and empty. The applause had faded and left a ringing silence only he could hear. Now the driver asked, "Home, Mr. Cross?" And Nathaniel, without a reason he could articulate, said no. Amelia's laugh turned airy. "Spontaneity? I don't recognize you." He should have taken her to the opening, to the party where champagne bubbled like conversation and conversation flowed like transaction. He should have posed on the staircase with her, and a dozen cameras and a list of investors. He should have completed the circuit. Instead, he said, "I'll call you tomorrow," and the car rolled to a stop and the door opened and he stepped out into the night air like a diver breaking the surface. He stood on the sidewalk and let the city move. People blurred past in coats and conversations. A 3 a.m. hum already starting to thrum under the day's last rituals. He walked with no destination, hands in his pockets, the cold needling his cheeks, the skyscrapers humming with all the things he had built that could not hold him. The further he got from the tower, the lighter his body felt, and the more a strange weight tugged somewhere in his chest, an ache that had no name to attach to it. He passed a neon sign whose R flickered like a heartbeat. He passed a couple arguing about nothing and everything. He passed a man selling roses out of a bucket and a woman humming to herself as she counted tips. He passed a dog with a bandana, grinning like life was simple. He kept moving until the city's reflections gave way to a block he had never noticed, though he must have driven by 100 times. Low buildings with chipped paint and stubborn lights, a laundromat that smelled like detergent and steam, a pawn shop asleep behind its accordion grate, and improbably, a small grocery store with a sign that announced, in defiant block letters, "Open 24 hours." He paused at the door, fingers on the cool handle, and caught himself thinking, this is ridiculous. He had a fridge inside a condo bigger than most people's lives. He had a chef who had memorized his preferences with the reverence of scripture. He had an assistant who could summon coffee from Paris if he wanted it. He pushed the door anyway. The bell over the threshold gave a cheerful jingle that felt like a prank in this city of polished hush. Fluorescent lights buzzed, soft and insect-like. The air smelled like citrus and floor cleaner, like bananas dreaming of being bred. The aisles were narrow and intimate, the kind of place where cereal boxes elbowed each other and a hand-lettered sign asked someone named Carmine to stop eating the olives. A radio crackled with a song from a decade he had ignored. Nathaniel stood in the door for a beat too long, and the cashier at the counter looked and it up. She was leaning on her elbows, reading a paperback with one finger marking the page. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot that hadn't asked for permission. There was a pen tucked behind her ear like a habit. Her eyes, alive, assessing, and amused, landed on him, traveled from the collar of his coat to his polished shoes, then to his face, where they seemed to park. "You look lost," she said, not unkindly. She glanced past him, theatrically scanning the empty street. "Did the runway end out there and you overshot?" It was the way she said it, deadpan, the faintest smile at the corner of her mouth, no heat in the tease, no heat-seeking missile to a wallet, that disarmed him. He opened his mouth to deliver some version of a joke he kept for these moments and found that his mind, which could recite pitch decks and deal terms in the middle of a storm, had nothing. He began, and then he laughed, a small, surprised sound. "Maybe," he admitted. "I was driving." "As one does," she said, nodding. "We happen to sell excellent existential crisis snacks. Aisle 3 is Therapy by Potato Chip." He looked down the aisle and saw a wall of color, salt and vinegar confessions, sour cream and onion regrets, barbecue reconciliations. "I'll take a tour." He pushed a basket into his own hands, surprised at the feel of the plastic grip, and stepped into the store. The world contracted to the geometry of labels. He moved slow, reading, as if the milk and cereal were in a language he hadn't studied. At the produce section, he reached for an apple and remembered, with a little jolt, that he liked the way a good apple resisted your teeth before giving in. He picked one up, thumb brushing the skin as if the fruit might change its mind. In the freezer aisle, he stared at pizzas frosted with improbable cheese, bags of frozen vegetables promising virtue. He picked a pizza because the picture made a promise, and a carton of eggs because he wanted to remember if he still knew how to crack them. He grabbed water because thirst felt like something he could name. The radio was playing a song with too many hand claps. The hum of the refrigerated cases was almost soothing. He found himself smiling at a row of ridiculous novelty hot sauces with names that threatened lawsuits. He put one in the basket. It felt like a dare. When he returned to the counter, the cashier closed her book and slid it aside. She didn't say anything about recognizing him, though he saw a flicker of awareness in the angle of her smile. She didn't reach for her phone. She scanned the items with an ease that suggested she could do this in the dark. "Cooking tonight?" she asked, nodding at the eggs. "Attempting," he said. "It's brave," she deadpanned. "Do you have a fire extinguisher? We sell limes. They don't help with fires, but they'll make your failure taste zesty." He startled into another laugh, real, unguarded, the sound of something unlatched. "I'll risk it. You want a bag?" He looked at the basket, the actual objects of a life that didn't require an RSVP, and said, "No, I'll carry it." Her eyebrow twitched with what he thought might be approval. 23 even. He reached for his wallet, a motion so practiced it might as well have been attached to a metronome, and handed her his card. She glanced at the name, flicked her gaze back up, and if there was recognition, it came paired with indifference, like noticing a cloud looks like a ship and then returning to your book. "You the owner?" he asked, and he didn't know why he cared. "Nah," she said, handing the card back and pushing the receipt toward him. "I'm just the funny cash. Here." The owner's probably asleep, dreaming of bread margins and leaky freezers. "What are you reading?" he asked, nodding at the paperback. "Something with sentences that make me feel less alone," she said, as if it were the most obvious category. "You should try it sometime." "Being less alone?" "Sentences," she said, amused. "But hey, start wherever you need." He found himself reluctant to move, which was absurd. He was a man with a driver waiting somewhere he had dismissed, with a bed high above the city and a view people posted on their walls. He said, "I'm Nathaniel," and it felt like a confession. "Maya," she replied, like a solution. He walked out with the eggs tucked against his side and the ridiculous hot sauce clinking like a dare in his pocket. The bell jingled, and the city received him again, same noise, same light, and a small, undeniable difference threaded through it. He stood beneath the sign that promised the store would never sleep and stared at his reflection in the dark glass, a man in a $1,000 coat holding a frozen pizza, looking for something he didn't know how to ask for. The driver texted a punctuation mark. He didn't answer. He started walking, the carton carefully balanced, the street breathing around him. Somewhere behind him, Maya reopened her book. Somewhere ahead, a skittering breeze lifted a paper cup and set it down again, careful with it, like it might break. The grocery store door closed behind him, but Nathaniel didn't return to his car. He walked instead, slow and restless, as though the air outside had changed density. The carton of eggs was cool against his palm, the frozen pizza numbing the skin beneath his coat, and yet something inside him burned, a restless ache, as if he'd cracked a shell he didn't know he'd been trapped inside. Maya's voice lingered, needling him with a truth disguised as humor. "You look lost." No board member had dared to say it. No girlfriend had cared enough to notice. Her words clung to him like static electricity, irritating and alive. He wandered through streets he hadn't set foot on in years. They were ordinary, painted with chipped storefronts and crooked neon signs, alive with people who lived without press releases. A man laughed loudly at his own joke in the diner. A woman in scrubs leaned against a lamppost, tapping at her phone with tired thumbs. Somewhere, a child's voice carried through an open window, singing off-key. Nathaniel felt like a ghost moving among them, visible but untouchable. Back in the penthouse, the silence hit him like a slammed door. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the skyline, glittering with the illusion of power, but the space was sterile. The glass reflected him back at himself, a man in a tailored coat holding eggs like a prop in a bad play. He set them on the marble counter, their fragility mocking him. For the first time in years, he wanted to crack one just to see what came out. He tried to sleep, but the ceiling pressed down with the weight of May, a smirk, her unflinching eyes. He saw again the way she didn't flinch at his name, didn't reach for her phone, didn't give him the worship he was used to. She treated him like any man. It unnerved him. It thrilled him. By morning, he had convinced himself it was an anomaly, a moment of weakness, but his hands betrayed him. Instead of reaching for the tailored suit hanging like armor, he pulled on a sweater he hadn't worn in years. By evening, his car stopped not at the usual rooftop gala, but in front of that 24-hour grocery store. The bell chimed. Maya looked up from the counter, a pencil now tucked into her messy knot, a crossword open in front of her. She arched an eyebrow. "Back again? Don't tell me you already burned the kitchen down." "I survived," Nathaniel said, more sheepish than he meant to. He held up a bag of limes he'd grabbed on impulse. "Insurance policy." Her laugh wasn't like the champagne fizz of Amelia or any of the others. It was sharp, unpolished, real. It cracked something open in him. The second night turned into a third, then a fourth. Each time, he lingered longer, filling his basket with unnecessary things, soup cans, discount chocolate, even a plant he had no idea how to care for. Maya teased him relentlessly. "Practicing being human? Careful. The tabloids might say you've been radicalized by laundry detergent." And yet, beneath her jokes, there was an undercurrent, a question she didn't voice but hung between them like a knife. "What are you doing here, millionaire?" Suspense curled around him tighter each night. Paparazzi hadn't caught on yet, but Nathaniel knew it was a matter of time. His carefully curated image couldn't survive grocery aisles and late-night banter with a cashier. The danger wasn't only public, it was personal. Each encounter was pulling threads from the fabric of his constructed life. On the fifth night, he lingered too long at the counter. Maya tapped her pencil against the register. "So what's the deal, Nathaniel? Guys like you don't just wander into places like this. Did you lose a bet?" The truth was heavy on his tongue. He didn't know how to say, "I'm suffocating. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't remember what real feels like until I stand here." So instead he said, "Maybe I like being lost." For once, Maya didn't laugh. Her amber eyes studied him, sharp and searching. "Then maybe," she said softly, "you're finally in the right place." Nathaniel walked out with nothing in his basket that night. But his chest was heavier than it had been in years, heavy with a suspense he couldn't shake. Because he knew the world he built was starting to crack, and a cashier with a crooked smile was the one holding the hammer. Nathaniel Cross wasn't a man who repeated himself. Repetition was for routines, and routines were for the people who orbited him. Assistants who filed his schedule, chauffeurs who drove the same roads, models who rehearsed the same lines about how amazing he was at galas. Nathaniel was the anomaly, the force of nature, the self-made storm that had built a tower of steel and glass. That was the story anyway. And yet for the third night in a row, he found himself standing under the neon glow of the 24-hour grocery store, the one that hummed like a secret in the bones of the city. The bell chimed overhead, mocking him with its smallness, its ordinary cheer. Maya looked up from the counter, her expression a mix of amusement and suspicion, as if she'd been waiting to see whether he'd actually return. "3 nights in a row," she said. "That's not a coincidence. Either you're stalking me or you've developed a dangerous addiction to frozen pizza." Nathaniel smirked, though it felt weaker than usual. "What if it's both?" Maya didn't flinch. He leaned on the counter, chin propped on her hand. "Then you're worse off than I thought." There was no flirtation in her tone, no invitation. Just blunt observation, wrapped in humor. It made him laugh in spite of himself. He grabbed a basket and wandered the aisles, but tonight he wasn't searching for food. He was searching for silence in the noise of his life, and the grocery store gave it to him in ways he couldn't explain. By the fourth night, people began to notice. Not here. No one in the fluorescent aisles cared about billionaires or glossy magazines. But outside, in the world of glass towers and paparazzi lenses, rumors started to leak. A grainy photo appeared online. Nathaniel Cross in casual clothes, carrying grocery bags. The caption burned across the gossip sites. Billionaire shopping for love, mystery store trips spark questions. His phone exploded the next morning. His publicist's voice was sharp as glass. Nathaniel, where the hell were you last night? Do you have any idea how this looks? Yes, he replied evenly, though the image on the tablet made his stomach twist. Do I? Emilia, the model he'd escorted to galas, called twice. The first voicemail was sultry curiosity. The second, icy rage. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. Tell me you're not throwing away everything for some cashier. He didn't return the call. That night, he went back anyway. The bell chimed, louder now, like a warning. Maya caught the flicker in his eyes. Bad day? You could say that. Perfect, you're in the right place. Aisle 2, chips. Aisle 5, cheap beer. Both cure just about everything. He chuckled, but it caught in his throat. The thing is, he said, lowering his voice, people are starting to notice. Maya's face went still. Notice what? That I'm here, with you. Her eyes narrowed. Correction, you're here, with groceries. I just worked the register. Don't do that, Nathaniel said quietly. Don't pretend you don't see it. The air tightened between them. Maya crossed her arms as if bracing herself. So what happens now, Nathaniel? Your model girlfriend throws a fit, your PR team drafts a statement, and I end up with cameras in my face because you decided to slum it for a few nights? Her words were knives, but honest ones. He flinched because they cut at the truth. I didn't come here for a scandal, he said, almost pleading. I came here because what? She pressed, amber eyes locked on his. Because it's funny to play normal for a week? Because you needed a break from your perfect, polished life? Or because you're so empty inside that you don't know where else to go? Silence. He couldn't deny it. He couldn't spin it. The bell above the door rang again, breaking the tension. 2 customers walked in, laughing loudly, grabbing soda and candy. Nathaniel stepped back, retreating into himself as Maya rang them up. But the words hung between them, sharp and electric. You're empty inside. That night, when he finally left, a black sedan idled across the street. Not his driver, not his assistant. A paparazzo, camera lens long and hungry, pointed straight at him. Nathaniel froze, the eggs and bread in his hands suddenly feeling like evidence. The flash went off, searing white into his vision. By morning, the story was everywhere. Billionaire CEO seen leaving grocery with mystery woman. They didn't name Maya yet, but her face blurred in the background of one shot, sharp enough for anyone who knew her to recognize. Nathaniel sat in his penthouse, the headlines scrolling like judgment. For the first time in years, fear clawed at him. Not fear of losing money or power or reputation, but fear of what this would do to her. Maya had no armor for this world, no publicist, no fortress of wealth, just her sharp wit and a register. And he, Nathaniel Cross, the man who had everything, realized he might be the one thing that could destroy her life. Yet when he closed his eyes, all he saw was her expression from the night before, sharp and unflinching, as if she already knew the storm was coming. And still, she didn't look away. The headlines didn't fade. They multiplied. Within 48 hours, Nathaniel's face was plastered across every glossy site and digital tabloid, paired with grainy images of Maya. From runway to register, Billionaire's late-night mystery woman identified. The photographs were merciless. One caught her mid-laugh, head tilted back behind the counter, hair tumbling loose. Another showed Nathaniel leaving the store with grocery bags, Maya's figure blurred in the background. To the world, it was a love story made to be devoured. To Maya, it was an ambush. By the time Nathaniel arrived at the store on the 4th night, the parking lot was poisoned. A cluster of photographers leaned against their cars, cameras slung like rifles. When he stepped out, the shouts began. Nathaniel, who is she? Is she your new girlfriend? Does she know about Emilia? The questions rained down like bullets. Inside, the air was different. The cheerful jingle of the bell felt brittle, fragile. Maya wasn't at the counter. Marcus, the night manager, stood stiff-armed, glaring at Nathaniel, as though he'd personally set fire to the place. She's not here, Marcus said flatly. Where is she? Home. Where she should be. Away from this circus. His voice was low, dangerous. You need to leave her alone, Cross. She's not a headline for you to chew up and spit out. Nathaniel opened his mouth, but Marcus cut him off. I mean it. She worked hard for this life, even if it's small. She doesn't deserve to have it wrecked because some billionaire decided he was bored. The words hit harder than any insult Nathaniel had endured in boardrooms. He left, chased by camera flashes that felt like a punishment. At midnight, he stood outside Maya's apartment door, heart pounding like he was the one who lived in a walk-up with peeling paint. When she opened it, she wasn't smiling, she wasn't teasing, she was exhausted. Her living room was cluttered with open paint tubes, half-finished canvases, and a laptop that had seen better years. She looked like someone who had been pacing for hours. I saw the headlines, she said, voice tight. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing. My manager called me twice. Customers at the store were whispering. Some guy followed me home. Her eyes locked on his, hard and unblinking. This is your world, Nathaniel, not mine. And now, it's bleeding into everything I care about. I didn't want this, he said, the words tasting weak even as he spoke them. Didn't want it? You walked into my life like you were shopping for an escape hatch, but you didn't think what happens when your shadow follows you, did you? He stepped closer. Maya, I swear, I never meant for you to get caught in it. Then what did you mean? Her voice cracked more from fury than fear. What do you want for rom me? A fling? A good story? Proof you can feel human for 5 minutes? Nathaniel swallowed hard, struggling to find words. The truth pressed at him, messy and raw. I don't know who I am without this. I don't know where I'm going. But when I'm here, when I'm with you, I feel alive in a way I haven't in years. I want something real, he managed, his voice low. I don't even know what that looks like anymore. But I know it's not galas or magazine spreads. It's not Amelia. It's not any of that. He gestured helplessly to the canvases, to the imperfect, vibrant mess of her apartment. It feels closer to this. Maya's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again. If you want real, then prove it. Don't just say the words. Walk away from the empire you built on lies and image. Be Nathaniel, not Cross the CEO. He felt the weight of her challenge crash into him. Walk away? From Sterling Cross Enterprises, from the machine he'd bled years into, from the identity that defined him? The idea was unthinkable. It was also intoxicating. Before he could respond, a sharp knock rattled her door. Maya froze. Nathaniel's pulse spiked. She opened the door a crack and the hallway exploded with flashbulbs. Paparazzi had tracked him here. Questions shouted through the opening. Is she the one? Are you moving in together? How long has this been going on? Maya slammed the door shut, her chest heaving. Do you see? This is what you bring with you. You don't even have to try, and my life is already a headline. Nathaniel pressed his palms to his temples, fighting the storm building inside him. He had the power to crush these photographers, to sue, to silence, to erase, but none of that would erase the look on Maya's face. Betrayal, fear, and something far more dangerous. Disappointment. For the first time in his adult life, Nathaniel Cross didn't know if he could control the narrative. He didn't know if he should. He only knew this. If he walked out that door without answering her challenge, he might lose the only person who had ever dared to ask him if he was lost. And worse, he might never find his way back again. The storm broke wide open. By the 5th day, Maya's name wasn't just whispered in the aisles of the grocery store. It was plastered across headlines, dissected in podcasts, and turned into hashtags. Hashed Cashier Queen. Hashed Cross Mystery Woman. Hashed from models to Maya. Some mocked her. Others romanticized her as a Cinderella of the checkout. The cruelty and fascination blended into a relentless fire that refused to burn out. Maya didn't have a PR team to shield her. She had Marcus, who banned photographers from the store with threats of calling the cops, and a handful of loyal regulars who scowled at anyone waving a camera phone. But the invasion seeped into her life like smoke under a door. A stranger followed her from work. A gossip site published her home address. Anonymous accounts flooded her phone with messages, some begging her to trap the billionaire, others spitting venom about how she wasn't good enough. Nathaniel read the comments until his fists shook. He wanted to smash his phone against the glass of his penthouse windows, but smashing wouldn't erase the words. Gold digger, nobody, pathetic cashier playing prin. As the board of Sterling Cross Enterprises summoned him to an emergency meeting, in the sleek conference room, beneath lights that gleamed like interrogation lamps, his empire turned on him. This scandal is a distraction, one director snapped. Investors are spooked. Our brand depends on exclusivity, another said. You've spent years cultivating an image of perfection, and now you're photographed buying eggs at a discount store. We can't allow your personal rebellion to endanger this company, the chairman declared. His tone was final, the gavel of men who believed they owned him. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, scanning their lined faces. Once, their approval had been oxygen. Now it tasted like poison. He thought of Maya, her messy bun and amber eyes, the way she had stared him down and asked, "What do you want? Not money, not another acquisition, not them." Still, fear coiled in his stomach. Walking away from them meant detonating everything he'd built, the fortress of control that had shielded him since his first million. Could he really tear it down for something as fragile and as real as love? The next evening, he drove to Maya's apartment, slipping past the cameras that prowled her block. She opened the door, eyes ringed with exhaustion, voice flat. "Do you see what's happening? Do you see what they've done to me?" she said, holding out her buzzing phone. Messages scrolled endlessly. Mockery, threats, marriage proposals from strangers. "I'll fix it," Nathaniel said. Her laugh was bitter. "You can't fix this with money. You can't sign a check and make it go away. This isn't a leaky faucet in your empire. It's my life." He stepped inside, shutting the door on the shouts outside. The apartment smelled of paint and coffee, the chaos of creation. He wanted to protect it, to shield it from the world, but she stood there like a barrier he couldn't bypass. "I told you I won't be your project," Maya whispered. "If you're serious, you need to choose, not me or them, yourself. Who are you when the cameras are gone? When the empire isn't in your pocket? If you can't answer that, then you don't get to answer me." Her words were knives, but they cut away the lies. Nathaniel sank onto her worn couch, pressing his palms to his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt the burn of tears. He thought of his father's voice, years ago, before the first deal, before the boardrooms. "Build something that matters, son, not just something that makes you rich." He had buried those words under glass and steel, until Maya dragged them into the light. When he looked up, his voice was raw. "They'll strip me bare. The board, the media, the investors. If I walk away, I lose everything." Maya knelt in front of him, her hands braced on her knees. Her face was fierce, unflinching. "Then maybe you'll finally be free." The words hit like thunder. Free. The word tasted foreign, dangerous, but in her mouth it sounded possible. The following day, Sterling Cross Enterprises held its quarterly press conference, cameras trained on the stage where Nathaniel always stood flawless, untouchable. The board expected him to soothe investors with carefully curated words. Instead, he stepped to the podium without notes, without the media smile, and for the first time in his career, he let silence sit heavy before he spoke. "I've been asked if I'm losing control," he said slowly, Scott, wanting the crowd. "The truth is, I never had it. I've spent years building a world of appearances, models, money, towers of glass, but someone asked me a question I couldn't answer." He paused, his voice thick with meaning. "She asked me if I was lost, and I realized I was." Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters leaned forward like predators scenting blood. Nathaniel's voice steadied, low but resolute. "So I'm stepping back from Sterling Cross Enterprises, effective immediately." Chaos erupted. Questions exploded like gunfire. The board members looked ready to choke, but Nathaniel didn't flinch. He thought of Maya, and for the first time in his adult life, he felt light. Terrified, but light. Outside, the world reeled. Inside, Nathaniel Cross took his first step into the unknown. And somewhere in a small apartment painted with unfinished canvases, Maya Lopez turned on her flickering TV, staring at the man on the screen, the billionaire who had just detonated his empire for the chance to be real.